This question is for Catherine. Catherine, your campaign has emphasized your trial experience. Why, in your estimation, is your trial experience more valuable than Dennis's administrative experience?
Well, I have administrative experience too, but I do think that trial experience for someone who's going to be leading a state attorney's office is critical. First off, the duties of a prosecutor is to prosecute cases. And it's impossible, I believe, for a leader who is going to be leading people who are prosecuting cases unless they've actually done it. Not only do I have the trial experience, but I also have the day-to-day prosecution experience, for example, going into court, handling motions, talking to victims, fighting for the rights of victims. So that's critical. Also, not only in addition to the trial experience that I've had, but also cases where I've had to deal with police officers, so that's important. There have been a lot of times when, as a prosecutor, you need to have the ability to prioritize cases, to find out which cases are important to proceed, and also, you know, not every time a person is arrested are they guilty. So, I mean, it's the experience itself. It's the day-to-day going into court, trying the cases, being responsible for prosecuting that's critical. And I have that experience, and my opponent does not.
Questions for Dennis. I want to go back for a moment to this issue of trying cases in the press, because I think this is important given the number of high-profile cases that your office has prosecuted the last few years. Your opponent contends that you have, I guess, overshared with the news media, that you have released certain pieces of information to the press which was inappropriate. I want to get your response to that, and if in a second term, your accessibility to the press and your ability to share details of ongoing cases is going to change.
Well, thank you. I don't think it's going to change. I promised the press when I ran in 2008 that I would give them more than 2 sentences to a case. And that's what they were getting from the prior administration. Some of the cases that we prosecuted were very, very high-profile cases. It's no mystery why we have a number of candidates running for school board, and it's no mystery why we have a number of candidates running for mosquito control. Those were 2 of the areas that we dealt a lot with in public corruption. And when you get into public corruption, you're talking about taxpayers' dollars. And I believe, and I know I'm on firm ground, that I will share as much information as possible without jeopardizing the defendant's right to a fair trial. A lot of this stuff is, when it's sent out on discovery, is available in the first place. I think we've worked together with the press on resolving some of these corruption issues just by some of the conversations. And I think that we've taken Monroe County a step further here in transparency and honesty in government. So I wouldn't change anything that I've done as rep. I think we've been very, very good at getting our message out to the public. And certainly the press has been very good in getting that message out. And getting the message out that, hey, we're not going to tolerate this anymore in Monroe County. There's a new sheriff in town. We're not going to put up with that. We're not going to put up with people stealing taxpayers' dollars. That's not going to happen. If I get a shot at it, I'm going to prosecute them. I'm going to take the pension too. That's all I have.
Quick follow-up. Can you cite any example where looking back you feel like you disseminated too much information to the press in an ongoing case or overshared?
None.
I have a question for Mr. Vogel. What criteria would you use to prosecute a capital case that would merit either life, between life and or execution?
You're asking me under what circumstances I'm going to be seeking the death penalty.
Correct.
The Florida statutes obviously provide for the death penalty in certain cases, but there are very few cases, and the criteria is spelled out in law. Typically, you would want to look for at least 2 aggravating circumstances. I think probably the most important aggravating circumstances is the heinous, atrocious, and cruel. Lawyers who do death penalty litigation refer to it as HAC. Probably the more cruel and the more heinous a crime is, the more likely this is a case that would warrant the death penalty. Certain other factors that you would look into is whether or not who the victim was. A lot of times, one of the aggravating factors is a child. There have been a case, for example, I prosecuted the Jimmy Rice case. A lot of you are familiar with that. It did happen up in Miami. But even more recently, the Tansy case was a typical case where it was appropriate for the death penalty. That was a case where a woman was abducted from Miami, brought down here. The atrocious, heinous, and cruel part of it was that not only was she sexually battered and robbed, but also she was strangled. Going into detail, she was strangled and then she was making too much noise. So the defendant stopped strangling her and then gagged her and then proceeded to strangle her again. This is the type of case that the Florida statutes allow for the death penalty. So you do have to look at the factors. I have been involved in death penalty litigation. I have participated in prosecuting people for the death penalty. It certainly is something that is not something that I take lightly, and it has to be judiciously, very carefully weighed.
Follow up, Dennis. Please respond to the same question.
Well, I've never prosecuted a homicide case, but I have people in my office that have. I think we've prosecuted 3 or 4 here since I became state attorney, and all of them have been life sentences. Everyone was found guilty. I sit with my prosecutors who have that case, and we'll go over the factors and see the strength of the case and whether there's mitigating factors or what have you that would preclude the death penalty. Sometimes you're better off just trying and getting a plea to life instead of going through the circumstances where you would prosecute someone for death. And you look at these death penalty cases and people that get sentenced to death, it's 20, 30 years down the road. And the cost is very, very expensive to the state, to the taxpayers. So there's a lot of factors to be weighed there. I've never tried one. I mean, I guess I could go in second seat if I want to, but I have a lot of respect for the prosecutors that work for me, that handle these cases. And the ones coming up that will get an opportunity to one day prosecute those type of cases. And I'm certainly not going to take that away from them so I can score some political points.
This is for Catherine. Catherine, you've chosen to run against an incumbent, and I'm curious, is your candidacy based strictly on your style to run this office in a different way, or do you have some agenda yourself that you feel isn't being executed, and if elected, this is what you want to accomplish as the state attorney?
Okay, let me see if I understand your question, Richard. First off, I want to say that I have dedicated myself, I've dedicated 27 years to being a prosecutor. I absolutely love this job. This is something that I excel at, and this is something that I want to obviously to continue doing and to run this office. I believe in my heart that there are deficiencies in the way that the state attorney's office is being run, and that's the reason why I'm running for state attorney, because I believe that I can do a much better job. I believe it's critical that we have a new state attorney come in, because I do believe that there are things that need to be changed. I firmly and in my heart believe that we need to address the issues, and we need to start following the ethical rules. I believe that it is very, very necessary that we have someone that has the judgment to prioritize cases in this office. This is a critical office. It's a very important office. If people who are arrested need to be treated with dignity, and they need to have a fair trial. And at the same time, the victims need to be heard, and the victims need to be able to rely upon a state attorney's office that's going to fight for them as well. And I believe that I'm the best candidate to do that.